My sister-in-law ended up in the wrong bridal sedan chair with General Zhao's youngest daughter. By the time everyone realized and tried to swap them back, the original bride had already consummated the marriage. Just like that, my rough-around-the-edges brother somehow ended up with a refined, well-bred wife. But later, when I saw him in the courtyard, chopping thread with a broadsword to help her, I felt like they actually made a pretty good pair.
1.
On the day my brother got married, both mother and I were overjoyed. He had left the village at 14, tagging along with some older uncles to seek a living. We all thought he'd end up doing backbreaking labor like hauling heavy loads. But by a twist of fate, he saved the life of a commanding officer on the road, who helped him enlist in the army. When he came back to fetch us, he was already a fifth-rank general titled General Dingyuan, meaning defender of the frontier. The day we first arrived at his official residence in the capital, my mother couldn't stop smiling. The spacious courtyard, the finely furnished rooms, and all the luxurious decorations inside. When we returned to the village, we'd have enough to brag about for 3 days and 3 nights straight. But after smiling for a while, Mother started crying. Beneath my brother's fine clothes were scars stacked upon scars. One gash only half a finger's width away from his heart. Just looking at it made you realize how close he had come to death. Mother said this wealth and honor had been earned at the cost of his life, and that we had to make sure he lived a good life from now on. And what makes a man's life good? Of course, it's a warm home, a loving wife, and lively children. The officer my brother saved was surnamed Zhao, and he had also been promoted to a fifth-rank general, just half a level higher than my brother. They had made a pact on the battlefield. If they both survived, Zhao would marry his youngest daughter to my brother. As soon as Mother heard about it, she could barely sit still before starting preparations. I secretly asked my brother, "Brother, do you like that Miss Zhao?" He looked up at the sky and said, "When you're fighting wars, you don't think about liking someone or not. You just hold on to whatever hope you can to stay alive." His gaze was distant and empty. I figured the battlefield must have been unimaginably hard. So besides thinking of Mother and me, he must have needed even more dreams of a better life to hold on. Then he added, "Whether I liked her before doesn't matter. Once I marry her, I'll make sure to love her. I won't let her freeze, or go hungry, or be unhappy." He looked at me seriously and said, "Xiaoji, remember this. This is what a real man does. If the man you marry one day can't do that, tell your brother. I'll come and take you back. We have money now. I can afford to take care of you for a lifetime."
2.
My brother had it all planned out. But just before the finish line, the wrong bride ended up in the wrong sedan chair. That day, a strange gust of demonic wind swept through, and the bridal procession staggered down the street. Coincidentally, a daughter from the Minister of Right's household was also getting married that same day on the same road. Recently, a famed painter from the matchmaking temple in the outskirts had become all the rage, and every family getting married was using bridal sedan chairs and wedding robes designed by him. Because of that, the sedan chairs and dresses looked exactly the same. None of the servants realized the mistake in the chaos. By the time they bowed to heaven and earth and entered the bridal chamber, when they lifted the bride's veil and prepared for the cross-cup wine ceremony, one of Zhao's maids screamed, "Who are you? Where's our young miss?" Mother and I heard the commotion and rushed over, only to see a young woman dressed in a bright red wedding gown, sitting quietly at the edge of the bed. She didn't show much expression, but somehow still radiated gentleness. My brother, face red to the ears, stammered, "Gee, good lady, don't worry. I've already sent someone to inform the Gu family. They'll be here soon." Standing behind him, I noticed his ears had turned scarlet. The maids explained in a flurry, and Mother and I finally understood. This wasn't Miss Zhao. She was Miss Qiao Qujin, the eldest legitimate daughter of the Minister of Right's household. Unlike my brother's modest wedding, her marriage to Gu Qing, the renowned official, had been the talk of the capital for months. Even a country bumpkin like me had heard the gossip, how Miss Qiao had suffered under a harsh stepmother. Yet, thanks to the blessings of her late mother in heaven, caught the eye of the young master from the Grand Chancellor's family. Gu Qing wasn't just from a good family, he was brilliant too. Having ranked third in the imperial exams at just 17, and risen to a fifth-rank literary official in only 4 years. In Great Zhao, literary officials were valued far more than military ones of the same rank. Sigh, my brother really couldn't compete with that. Even though I could see stars shining in his eyes. He kept his distance from Miss Chiao, gently assuring her that the Gu family would come for her soon. But in the end, only an old nursemaid and a young maid showed up. The old woman wiped her tears and said, "Miss," by the time the Gu family realized the mistake, Master Gu and Miss Zhao had already consummated their marriage. The Gu family says the engagement cannot be salvaged now. The young maid, quicker with her tongue, burst out angrily. The wicked servants at the house. As soon as they heard the Gu family wouldn't be marrying our miss anymore, they packed up her dowry and left, without even sending someone to fetch her. What are we supposed to do now? If we go back to the Chiao family, who knows what kind of wretched man they'll marry her off to next? At that moment, Mother finally understood. She waved her hand and told the servants to leave the room. She was still getting used to ordering people around, so she hesitated a bit before speaking, but before she could, the young lady beat her to it. Miss Chiao raised her head and looked straight at my brother. Her voice trembled slightly, but it was more than fear, it was determination. The determination to fight for herself, just once. She said, "Young Master Song, what's done is done. Would you be willing to make the best of this mistake and marry me?" Many, many years later, my brother told me that the first moment he lifted her veil, he thought he had married a fairy. But before he could even enjoy the dream, reality shattered it. Fortunately, heaven had mercy and gave him a second chance. So, of course, his answer could only be yes. 3. That night was truly chaotic. It wasn't until we sent off the Zhao family's people and their dowry to the Gu residence that the wedding chamber could finally restart. Seeing how clueless my brother looked, Mother actually pulled me to squat down under the window to eavesdrop. My legs went numb from crouching before I finally heard the 2 wooden logs inside exchange their first words. My brother stammered, If you don't want to, I can sleep on the couch. I get it. I'm just a rough man, not like the people you're used to." Miss Chiao didn't say anything at first. After a long while, there was a soft smooch sound, just like when I kissed the kittens at home. Then Miss Chiao spoke, stammering too, in a tiny voice. Does that answer your question about whether I'm willing?" I didn't know if my brother understood, but Mother definitely did. She pulled me up and, once we were a bit farther away, laughed heartily. Good, good. He married a fine wife. Your brother's grown this big and still isn't as quick-witted as a young lady. Since Mother was happy, I was happy too. But we hadn't walked far before we overheard something that wasn't so pleasant. It was the 2 maids who had come with my new sister-in-law. One of them, named Chui Huan, pouted and said, "Our poor miss really has terrible luck. She was supposed to marry the elegant young Master Gu, but now she's stuck with a country bumpkin. Did you see how messy this place is?" I just went to the kitchen and they didn't even think to prepare hot water. We had to do it ourselves. Tao Momo immediately scolded her. "Mind your manners. What do you mean their house? From now on, this is also our Mrs. Home. The young master, the old madam, and the young lady of the family are our masters too. You'd better watch your tongue and not cause trouble for our Mississippi." Even after reprimanding her, Tao Momo sighed quietly. "What else can we do? Miss doesn't even have a dowry trunk left. That's a huge weakness. From now on, all her food and clothes will rely on others. She won't even have the confidence to raise her voice." I wanted to tell them they were wrong. My brother had promised he would never let his wife suffer. And we had money now. We could provide a good life. But Mother stopped me. She took me back to our room and spent half the night counting gold. Those gold bars had been given to her by my brother. He told us that after he was promoted to a vanguard commander, whenever they won battles, the general would distribute spoils according to merit. Since my brother didn't understand jewels or fine things, he always chose gold instead. The day mother arrived, he moved all his gold into her room, because she had once said that if she could ever sleep atop a pile of gold, she would feel her life was complete. My brother remembered her wish, so he saved and saved, giving her more gold than she could dream of. Mother divided the gold into 3 parts. Pointing to one share, she said, "This is for your dowry. I've seen how things work here in the capital. If a girl doesn't bring enough dowry to last a lifetime, people will talk behind her back. Just look at your sister-in-law. Even though she's far better than your brother in talent and manners, she still has to worry about being looked down on because of her missing dowry. I really liked my new sister-in-law, but I like my brother even more." Feeling upset, I protested. "My brother's not bad at all. Sure, he's a bit tanned, but he's so handsome. When we were kids, all the village girls loved following him around. He may not be book smart, but didn't you see him practicing sword moves in the courtyard this morning? All the maids were staring at him like they were enchanted." Mother chuckled proudly. "Of course.
He's my son."
How could he not be good?" Then she pointed at the other 2 shares of gold. "One is for your brother, and the other for daily household expenses. I plan to let your sister-in-law manage it all, to put her at ease. Do you agree?" I nodded immediately. "Of course. It's only right. Brother earned it, so it's fine for sister-in-law to manage it." 4. The next morning, sister-in-law respectfully offered tea to mother, then handed her a forehead ribbon, and gave me a small scented pouch. Apologizing, "I'm sorry the gifts are simple. I hope mother and little sister won't mind." Normally, a new bride would prepare embroidered gifts for her new family, but all of sister-in-law's dowry had been taken back by the Chiao family. Even her spare clothes had to be bought hurriedly. Where could she have gotten a forehead ribbon and a sachet? Brother gently helped her sit down and explained with a hint of distress. Jean Yang stayed up all night to embroider these. She said she had already failed to observe all the formalities, so she had to make up for it as much as she could. Looking closely, we could see the bluish shadows under her eyes. Mother was right. Sister-in-law was uneasy at heart, which was why she refused to make even the slightest misstep. I quickly grabbed her hand and said, "Don't call me little sister so formally. Just call me Xiaoji like my brother does. Your hands are amazing. The butterfly on this sachet looks like it could really fly. Not like me. I can't even sew a straight stitch." Her eyes softened slightly, and she smiled as if she had finally found something to look forward to. "If you're willing, we can practice together." Mother interrupted. "That won't do. Dashi's wife, once the 3-day return visit is over, you'll have to take charge of managing the household. Where will you find time to play with a little girl?" Sister-in-law looked flustered, as if the idea was too much for her to even imagine. "Mother, that's too much for me. I'm young and inexperienced. I should be learning from my elders, not taking charge." Mother shoved the key into her hand. "Just think of it as helping out an old woman. Every day people come asking me about this account or that account. I can't read much. How would I know what they're talking about? It's driving me crazy. Here, the storeroom keys are yours now. Go check the inventory when you have time." Inside the storeroom were the gold bars, and some gifts exchanged with other military families. Once sister-in-law realized mother was serious, even brother squeezed her hand encouragingly, until she finally accepted the keys with great solemnity. "Mother, I promise, I'll make sure every account is clear, and I won't let you down." That very afternoon, she practically forgot her newlywed husband and threw herself into the storeroom with Tao Momo and Chui Huan, busily counting and recording everything. Mother worried they'd overheat, so she sent me with a bowl of mung bean soup. Just as I reached the door, I heard Chui Huan's voice again, but this time, she was finally saying something nice. Who would have thought the old madam would be so generous, giving up the household keys? In most wealthy families, the old matriarch keeps the power until she's ancient. Our miss is so lucky, the whole family trusts her. Sister-in-law didn't reply, but she wore a true, easy smile, not the cautious one from that morning. Seeing it made my heart warm. It was clear she understood Mother's intentions. I suddenly stuck my head into the room and said, "Sister-in-law, I brought you soup. Also, Brother keeps pacing back and forth outside the courtyard. Can't you spare him a little attention? Those gold bars aren't going to run away if you wait a bit." Sister-in-law blushed bright red. Whether from embarrassment or panic, I couldn't tell. Without answering, she just waved her hand at me. "Since you're here, Xiaoji, come help me. You're 13, you should start learning too."
Sigh.
I had only meant to help my brother, but in the end, I got roped in too.
5.
With sister-in-law occupied with managing household affairs, there was no time left for her to prepare the gifts for her return visit. Brother took it upon himself to handle everything, even planning to return the betrothal gifts we had retrieved from the Zhao family as part of the offering. Though the Zhao family shared a deep bond with Brother, and our gifts were already generous, Mother, recalling the Zhou family's ways, still added a few more items. She wished to preserve sister-in-law's dignity. Yet, when we reached the gates of the Zhou residence, we were not even allowed to set foot inside. A long line of servants stood blocking the entrance, and not a single member of the household came out to meet us. Instead, a steward stepped forward and shouted coldly, "In Great Zhao, civil officials and military men do not intermarry. Our Zhou family does not recognize this marriage. Eldest miss, if you have a shred of backbone, you should return home. The family shall provide for you for the rest of your life."
Fa.
Return to what? If not a Buddhist convent, where else could she go? No wonder Mother had insisted I accompany them. She said that although Brother was a man, there were some occasions where a woman's hand might be more fitting, especially if that wicked stepmother planned any mischief. If trouble came, I was to protect sister-in-law and fear nothing. After all, we were country folk. It would be perfectly natural for us to not know proper manners. I was about to step forward, but Brother caught me by the collar and hauled me back. He gently set me behind him and strode forward with a clear, steady voice. "Civil and military men forbidden to intermarry? I heard Madame Gu personally reported this matter to the Empress Dowager only 2 days past. His Majesty himself was present, and he laughed heartily, praising it as a match made by heaven. Are you, a mere servant, daring to question the will of the Emperor?" Sister-in-law looked at Brother in astonishment. As for me, I could only stare, my eyes wide. Was this really my brother? Was my brother truly so eloquent? Facing the prestigious Zhou family without a hint of fear. Moreover, his words struck true. No sooner had he spoken than a man emerged from within the gates. Sister-in-law stepped forward, lowered her head in a formal salute, and called softly, "Father." Brother followed suit, greeting him respectfully as father-in-law. But Zhou Darren merely waved them off and said, "This official cannot accept such an address." There were neither proper matchmakers nor formal betrothal gifts. Our Zhou family does not acknowledge this union. And do not bring the Gu family into this. It is fine for a man to take bold action. But as for my daughter, had she known a shred of propriety and virtue, she would have returned home that very night, rather than truly marrying into another house. At that, even I, young as I was, understood the full cruelty of his words. To speak so publicly. He was not merely disowning her, he was forcing her toward death. Sister-in-law merely stood there, still and silent, her eyes dry, showing no outward sign of sorrow. Yet, somehow, I felt my heart ache even more for her. Perhaps she had been treated this way so often that she no longer found it strange. The crowd around us murmured in growing discontent. I moved to sister-in-law's side and quietly slipped my arms around her, whispering, "Do not be afraid, sister-in-law. You have a family now. We will protect you." The woman who had held back her tears throughout, at these words, finally let fall a single drop, splashing warmly against my cheek. 6. Seeing sister-in-law weep, Brother's voice grew thick with anger. "Master Zhou, your words confound reason. On our wedding day, we bowed to heaven and earth as is proper. My wife waited for her family to come and reclaim her, but all your household cared for was rushing to retrieve her dowry. Not a soul was sent to bring her back. She is but an 18-year-old girl. She made a mistake, and her parents abandoned her. What choice did she have but to follow the example set by the Gu family and carry on? As Brother's words fell, those who had been pointing and whispering suddenly came to a realization. Indeed, they muttered among themselves, the poor girl is still so young. How could she be expected to manage such matters herself? Naturally, she could only do as she saw others do. That's right. If the Zhou family truly refused the match, they should have fetched her back immediately that night. They only rushed to take the dowry, didn't they? Everyone knows Zhou Darren's wife is a stepmother. No wonder, where there's a stepmother, there's always a stepfather too. Ha! You lot don't understand. Originally, the girl was meant to marry into the Gu family. Naturally, they prepared a rich dowry to match their standing. But once the mistake happened, the stepmother must have been heartbroken. Thus the urgency to bring it all back. The chatter grew louder and harsher, and for a moment, Zhou Darren stood there speechless. Just then, a middle-aged man pushed through the crowd, his face stormy with anger. You treat my sister's child this way, he roared. You didn't even invite us, her mother's family, to the wedding. By sheer luck we arrived today and witnessed this disgrace. Otherwise, who knows how much more suffering my niece would have endured. My heart soared. Blood relations were stronger than anything. Brother, after all, was still a junior. But a maternal uncle's words carried real weight. I clutched sister-in-law's hand in excitement. The man turned and gestured, and out of the crowd marched a group of sturdy young men, each bearing wedding gifts wrapped in red silk. Facing the Zhou family's gates, he declared loudly, You may refuse this son-in-law, but I, her maternal uncle, do not. If you withhold her dowry, I will supply it myself. Filial piety begins with the elders fulfilling their duty, and if this is how you, as her father, treat her, then her son-in-law shall never again set foot upon your threshold. Henceforth, I alone shall recognize and honor this marriage. Brother immediately seized the momentum and declared loudly for all to hear. Good neighbors, you've heard it yourselves. It is the Zhou family who refuses to acknowledge me, their humble son-in-law. From today onward, my wife is part of the Song family. If she no longer honors them as her parents, it is because they have first cast her aside. As Zhou Darren himself has decreed, we shall trouble the Zhou family no more. With a bow to the crowd and sister-in-law's uncle, Brother turned on his heel and led the way home. Behind us, Zhou Darren shouted furiously, She's our only daughter. What uncle? What nonsense. But it was too late. The musicians that sister-in-law's uncle had hired struck up a joyous tune, their lively music drowning out Zhou Darren's cries. The crowd, disdainful of the Zhou family's coldness, cheered and followed us down the street. It truly felt like a proper wedding procession, a grand parade escorting sister-in-law to her new home. I climbed into the carriage with sister-in-law. Just before stepping inside, she turned and cast a glance at Brother's retreating back. For a moment, I thought I saw tiny, sparkling stars flicker in her eyes, just like those that had once shone in Brother's gaze on the night of their wedding. 7. Once the doors of our home were firmly shut, Brother finally revealed the truth. That so-called uncle was but a distant relative. Sister-in-law's true maternal family had long since perished. Otherwise, she would never have suffered such neglect. On the day of their wedding, seeing the Zhou family's heartless ways, Brother had secretly sent word to comrades from the army, asking them to bring this distant uncle to act in her stead. As for the dowry chests carried in by the uncle, though the goods within were but for show, the dowry list they paraded through the streets was genuine, and every item listed was now truly stored in our treasury. Brother had used his own betrothal gifts to fill the chests. He had orchestrated the entire spectacle to let the world know. Sister-in-law was a woman with families standing behind her, and she had entered her marriage with a dowry of her own. No one could mock her now. There was another matter. One brother only spoke of after sister-in-law had retired to her chambers. He said that judging by the Zhou family's character, troubles would likely arise in the future. If they treated sister-in-law well, we would offer our aid. But if they mistreated her, then today's break would serve as a clean severance between us and them. I looked at him, a little dazed, and asked, "Brother, are you truly my brother? You've become so clever. The words you spoke at the Zhou residence, you would never have said them before." He ruffled my hair with a chuckle. "Foolish girl," he said. "Did you think life in the army relied solely on fists? Amongst the ranks are many old foxes, scholars wielding pens sharper than swords. Had I not learned to be shrewd, I couldn't even have fed the men under my command." Secretly, I thought to myself, no wonder. Now he too had become a black-skinned little fox. Mother, seeing my expression, hastily changed the subject, grumbling fiercely against Joe Darren, scolding him for mistreating his own daughter so cruelly. As she ranted, she hugged me tightly and said, "Thank heaven your father died early. Men have no hearts. If I were to see your father treat you like that from heaven above, I'd summon a thunderbolt to strike him dead." Startled, I quickly clapped my hand over her mouth, uttering hasty words of denial. Our Father in heaven must surely be watching over brother and me, for we grew up so well. Nothing like the wicked old wretch that was Joe Darren.
8.
After sister-in-law completed her 3-day return visit, her entire demeanor changed. She grew brighter, steadier, and soon took full charge of managing the household. Only then did Mother and I discover how much had gone missing from our home in recent days. Sister-in-law gathered all the servants into the courtyard, placing the updated inventory ledger in front of Aunt Lee. She said, "Auntie, you managed the storeroom before. Would you mind explaining where the bracelet from this jewelry set has gone?" Aunt Lee was an old acquaintance from our village. Mother instinctively spoke up in her defense. "She can't read, child. Even if you show her the ledger, she won't understand it." But sister-in-law only smiled gently and said, "That's no trouble, Mother. I made sketches alongside the words. One glance and they'll understand." Curious, I craned my neck to peek. Sure enough, each line of text had a drawing beside it, faithfully depicting the missing items. Aunt Lee chuckled awkwardly and said, "Oh, Dashi's wife. How would I know anything about bracelets? Perhaps it got misplaced when you moved things around these past few days." Standing behind sister-in-law, Tao Momo snorted heavily. "Aunt Lee," she said sternly, "the young madam calls you Aunt, out of courtesy, but do not forget your place. In this household, you shall address the masters properly. Old madam, general, young miss, and young madam." Mother opened her mouth as if to speak, but I gave her sleeve a firm tug from behind. Seeing that Mother remained silent, Aunt Lee grumbled, replying to young madam, "I truly do not know where that bracelet has gone." Sister-in-law lifted her eyes and gazed at her calmly. "In that case," she said, "Tao Momo, take a few people to search Auntie's room. Perhaps she simply misplaced it and forgot." At these words, Aunt Lee exploded in outrage, dropping to the ground with a loud thud, wailing like she used to back in the village. "Li Qianghua," she cried, calling Mother by name. "You begged me to come to the capital with you, and now your daughter-in-law treats me like a thief. Is this how the Song family repays old friends? By disgracing their fellow villagers?" But in truth, Mother had never begged her. When she heard brother was to be promoted, Aunt Lee had spent her days sighing and lamenting her hard life, until Mother, soft-hearted, asked if she wished to come along. She leapt at the offer, and several others, seeing her leave, had quickly followed. Mother had been too kind to refuse them, so she arranged work for all. Chui Huan, the sharp-tongued maid, stepped forward and snapped, "Enough of your pitiful act. I will search your room myself. If I find nothing, I'll kneel and apologize to you. But if I find even one stolen thing, you'll march yourself to the authorities. Do you dare?" At the mention of officials, Aunt Lee's face turned ashen. She collapsed where she sat, too terrified to speak. Yet Cui Huan did not relent, continuing in a cold, cutting voice. You dared steal because you thought a countrywoman like the old madam would not notice a missing bracelet, especially one she seldom wore. You thought you could slip it into your room and no one would be the wiser. But that's not all. The silver for groceries, the cloth for making clothes. You've been fattening yourself at our expense, haven't you? Though Aunt Lee said nothing, her ashen face said it all. Mother's eyes flickered with pain, but she said nothing, honoring her promise to brother that she would not interfere while sister-in-law was managing household affairs. Brother had told us, managing a household requires wisdom. The servants all have their little schemes. If mother speaks now, sister-in-law will lose her authority, and, in the future, they will use mother's name to suppress her. Then sister-in-law's management would be hollow indeed.
9.
Thus, mother held her tongue. But sister-in-law, seeing the sorrow in mother's eyes, softened her voice slightly and declared, Auntie is from my husband's hometown. I believe she merely lost her way for a moment. The Song family will grant her, and everyone a chance. Before sunset tomorrow, if all missing items are returned to the storeroom, we will not pursue the matter. But if anyone remains unrepentant, then we shall meet again, before the magistrate. As she spoke, I saw clearly. Many among the gathered servants breathed a sigh of relief. Just how much had they pilfered from her home? When the courtyard had cleared, mother slumped onto a seat, looking heartbroken. I trusted her, she murmured. We were friends for decades. How did it come to this? Hearing her lament, sister-in-law knelt at once and said, I have caused mother sorrow. I should have moved more slowly, but the situation is grave. If the inner court is not cleaned out quickly, greater disasters will follow. She spoke truly. Joe Darren had submitted a memorial to accuse brother of arrogance, of disrespect toward his elders, of lacking the virtue required for office. The civil and military officials were already clashing over the matter. Mother understood, but her heart could not yet reconcile itself. Quietly, I leaned close to sister-in-law and whispered, Don't worry. I have a way to help mothers see clearly. The next day, I brought mother to crouch by the storeroom doors. One by one, we watched the servants, aunts, uncles, maids, and footmen, slink back with armfuls of treasures. Gold hairpins, rings, earrings. Even a thick gold bracelet as wide as a man's finger. Mother's heart ached at the sight. At last, she rose of her own accord, knocked firmly on sister-in-law's door, and said, Daughter-in-law, take control. You must seize hold of these people at once.
10.
Throughout the process of managing the household, sister-in-law kept me close by her side. She said these were matters every young lady ought to learn. She herself had suffered greatly from the lack of guidance. Everything she knew had been learned in secret. That day when she faced down Aunt Lee was the first time she had ever truly put her lessons into practice. And when no one was watching, her hands had trembled uncontrollably. Sister-in-law's 18th year had been a hard and lonely one, yet she carried herself with such grace. Truly, she did wonderfully. The household servants were originally divided into two kinds. Those brother had purchased before we arrived in the capital, and those who had followed us from the village, whom mother insisted were not servants, but merely helpers. Sister-in-law sent all the village folk out of the residence. Those who had been caught pilfering were given severance silver and sent home. For those whose hands were clean, sister-in-law opened small shops outside and placed them there. She explained to mother that once a person lived long within the inner residence, even the freeborn would come to see themselves as servants. But in the world of commerce, they could earn an honest living by their own skills. And when they visited the residence again, they could stand tall, their bond with mother that of old village ties, not master and servant. As for those whose indentures belonged to the household, sister-in-law chose one who refused to admit his theft, had him beaten publicly, and declared that should there be a next time, he would be sold off without mercy. Besides, soon the household would purchase new servants. Thus, peace returned, and none dared stir trouble again. Mother, unable to bear the sight of the punishment, asked sister-in-law in distress. Jean Yang, must we really buy servants? Aren't we all people the same? It pains me to think we must turn others into slaves. In mother's courtyard, it had always been the village folk helping her. Often, she even worked alongside them, afraid they would call themselves slaves before her. Thus, sister-in-law took us to the slave market, a small courtyard crowded with the old and the young alike. Some no older than 5 or 6 years. A girl about my age, still spirited despite her circumstances, grasped mother's sleeve and knelt, pleading, "Old madam, you are kind. Please buy me and my little sister. I can work hard. We will do anything. We just don't want to be sent to filthy places." Mother lifted the girl's sleeve, revealing welts crisscrossing her arm, the marks of beatings from her previous owners. Behind her, hidden shyly, stood a little one barely reaching her waist. Sister-in-law stepped forward and said gently, "I know your heart is kind, mother, and you are unwilling to see anyone placed into bondage. But you do not know the filth and cruelty within great households. There are many like these poor souls, sold off after enduring unspeakable torments. If we buy them, at least in our home, they will not suffer. But if left to fate elsewhere—" She did not need to finish. Mother fell silent. I too held my tongue. We did not know the ways of great houses, but we had seen poverty and hardship in our village, had witnessed families forced to sell their sons and daughters. Compared to that, to end up in our home was perhaps already a mercy. 11. Thus, mother purchased the 2 little sisters, and finally, she made peace with it all. From that day on, she allowed sister-in-law to manage the household in the way of grand families, filling the manor with the bustle and energy of proper order. Even my small courtyard now had several lively maids bustling about. Over a month's time, the entire estate transformed. Everything had its place, every task its appointed hand. The kitchen kept hot soup and water ready all 12 hours of the day. The sweepers swept. Those managing clothes concerned themselves only with garments and shoes. The jewelry was entrusted to the most loyal senior maid, never again to be misplaced. One morning, mother awoke and watched the orderly, efficient bustle all around her. With a long sigh, she gazed skyward and murmured to father's spirit, "Old man, I have raised the children of your song family well, but you, truly, you had no fortune to enjoy such days." Once she had mourned the past, her thoughts turned to the future. She tugged me aside and asked, "Tell me, child, do your brother and your sister-in-law truly get along? When shall I finally hold a grandchild in my arms?" I laughed mischievously, following sister-in-law day after day. How could I not know? Only yesterday in the study, sister-in-law had been teaching me to read and paint. She had told me to pick a book that caught my interest. As I rummaged through the shelves, I came across a slim booklet. Its tale was most delightful. A country boy venturing forth into the wider world, suffering countless hardships, surviving the battlefield against all odds. Sister-in-law's brushwork was exquisite, the words simple and vivid. I read eagerly, but the more I read, the more the hero reminded me of brother. Teasingly, I asked, "Sister-in-law, did you think my brother was so remarkable that you painted him so vividly?" Sister-in-law flushed and tried to snatch the booklet back, muttering that it was merely a playful work. Yet when I pressed, though her cheeks turned bright red, she nodded shyly and whispered, "Of course my husband is remarkable. At such a young age, he dared to venture through so many lands, to win honor and survive the cruelest of battlefields. He is stronger than countless sons of noble families." Her pride in him shone brightly, full of admiration and deep affection. Mother and I had once worried they would be as awkward as ducks and chickens trying to speak. But seeing this little book, I realized they confided in each other far more than they did in us. Even I had never known that brother had once saved General Zhao's life with a scrap of field mouse meat. And what's more, before sister-in-law, brother's usual boldness would vanish. leaving him shy and clumsy. One afternoon, as he practiced swordplay in the courtyard, sister-in-law sat nearby sewing. The thread was too strong, refusing to snap. Sister-in-law rose to fetch scissors, but brother, unwilling to let her out of his sight even for a moment, panicked, and with one great swing of his broadsword, chopped the stubborn thread clean through. He broke into a sweat from embarrassment, and sister-in-law, blushing herself, had to gently wipe his brow. And there was an even funnier incident. Brother's attendants were all young men, and only when he was practicing did a maid deliver his tea. One day, a newly arrived pretty maid, having bribed others for the task, pretended to trip and fell right into brother's arms. By sheer coincidence, sister-in-law and I were bringing pastries to the courtyard just then. We caught the scene squarely. The tall, broad-shouldered brother flung the maid away like a startled cat, shouting, "She threw herself at me. I just stood there. I did nothing." Sister-in-law raised a teasing brow and said solemnly, "With your skills, how could you not avoid a little girl unless you allowed it? As your wife, I must take proper care to discipline you." Brother, panicking, blurted out, "I didn't. I wouldn't. I'll dismiss all the maids immediately. From now on, only male servants will be allowed." He even rushed to the storeroom to find the indentures. Sister-in-law, seeing she had teased too far, hurriedly pulled him back, laughing. "Don't talk nonsense. If you drive them all away, what about Xiaoji? When she marries, she'll need a proper dowry of maids. Will you provide it yourself?" It was that day I realized. A heart at peace had made sister-in-law so lively and lovely. And she cared for me too, so deeply that she had already begun planning how to secure me the finest dowry, the finest marriage. Perhaps because she had tasted too much bitterness herself, she vowed that I would never have to. With such deep love between them, surely the little nephew or niece I longed for was already quietly on the way. 12. Yet before the arrival of a child, brother still had troubles to resolve. The Zhou family's attacks against him had not ceased. Brother, unwilling to worry mother and me, only said lightly that the matter had grown into a dispute between the civil and military officials, and that it would take some time yet to settle. Truth be told, there was one thing that Zhou Darren had not lied about. In Great Zhao, it was an unspoken rule that civil and military officials did not intermarry. It was not written into law, but rather a tradition rooted deeply in the court's heart. At the founding of the dynasty, an alliance forged through marriage between the Grand Chancellor and a great general had nearly overthrown the Xiao imperial line. Since then, emperors of every reign had deliberately favored the civil court over the military, turning the two into opposing powers. When sister-in-law first explained this to me, I was deeply worried. How could she and brother withstand such a custom? But she patiently reassured me, saying they had benefited from the Gu family's protection. Gu Qing's father was already Grand Chancellor, and Gu Qing himself was a man of great talent. The emperor would surely make use of him. Thus, rather than letting Gu Qing marry the daughter of a lowly minister, it was preferable for him to wed the daughter of a fifth-rank general. After all, General Zhao was no minor figure. Though also fifth rank, his standing far surpassed that of younger military officials like brother. Thus, the Gu family had dared to embrace the mistaken marriage to Miss Zhao, even gaining imperial approval for it. Since no fault had been found with the Gu family, there would be no further blame placed upon brother and sister-in-law either. I felt a secret gratitude toward Lord Gu Qing, never expecting that, within a few days, I would meet him with my own eyes. He came seeking brother and sister-in-law's help, bringing with him none other than Miss Zhao, who had nearly become my sister-in-law. I stole a few glances at him. He was indeed fairer of skin than brother, but as for looks, in my heart, my brother was no less handsome. Lord Gu Qing offered a courteous bow and said, concerning the Zhou family's case, I, Gu Qing, humbly seek General Song and his lady's assistance. Might we find a quiet place to discuss the matter? Brother, however, stood unmoving, gripping his sword upright in front of him. He spoke coldly. "Does Lord Gu have no other words to say first to my wife?" Sister-in-law tugged gently at brother's sleeve, softly saying, "The matter has ended well for all. I hold no grudge. You should not either." But brother's anger would not be so easily soothed. He turned the blade of his sword toward Lord Gu and said, "It was heaven's mercy that spared us. Had things gone awry that day, you would have left a frail young woman to burn. Unless I give you a beating, I cannot vent the hatred in my heart." Having said this, he tossed aside his sword and charged forward with his fists. I rushed forward to pull him back, but sister-in-law stopped me, saying calmly, "Let him. That man deserves it." It was then I learned the whole truth. The disastrous mistaken marriage had been entirely orchestrated by Lord Gu himself. He had long admired Miss Zhao, but his lofty family background left him no honorable path to court her. Neither his father nor hers would ever have consented. Thus, he had devised the entire scheme. The famed painter from the Temple of Matchmaking, the identical bridal sedan chairs, even the date of the wedding, which my mother had thought auspicious. He had calculated it, choosing a day when the heavens would stir chaotic winds. Brother had long found that day suspicious. Fearing someone meant harm to sister-in-law, he had investigated quietly and uncovered the truth. Lord Gu had chosen sister-in-law for one reason alone. She had noble blood but no powerful family to shield her. Brother's fury burned not only for the deceit, but because had anything gone wrong, sister-in-law would have borne the brunt of it, helpless before her cruel stepmother's schemes. Fortunately, there had been no tragedy. Sister-in-law had become truly ours. 13. Miss Zhao stood aside, covering her eyes, but made no move to intervene. She said to sister-in-law, "This beating he deserves. When I first learned the truth, I too gave him a thorough thrashing. But I must explain, he did not act without thought for you. He considered General Song's character and your own strength before deciding to carry it out. I know, it was selfish, but even so, I could not bear to let him go." Sister-in-law smiled faintly, looking toward brother's direction. She replied, "Even if you wished to return him, I would not take him. Lord Gu's actions were far from honorable, but thanks to him, I have found a man truly worthy of trust. Each person has their destined path. Lord Gu has chosen his. I wish you both a lifetime of companionship and fulfilled desires." As her words faded, brother's fists too found their rest. Though there were no visible wounds upon Lord Gu's face, his body must have been battered enough to keep him limping for a month. He bent slightly at the waist and offered sister-in-law a stiff, apologetic bow. Then, without daring to approach her, he cast a glance toward Miss Zhao. At once, she stepped forward and supported him. Together, they slowly departed, a picture of another kind of hard-won happiness. After that cathartic beating, when Lord Gu came calling a second time, brother was more civil. After all, this man had, however clumsily, played the matchmaker to brother's great joy. Brother even prepared a fine stock of army medicine for bruises and sprains as a gift. They huddled in the study for a long, quiet conversation. And within days, the Zhou family fell. The list of charges posted at the marketplace was long and detailed, but the only words I truly absorbed were treason and collusion with enemy states. In the years my brother fought with blood and iron on the battlefield, that old villain had been secretly selling intelligence to our foes. No punishment could ever be enough. On the day of Zhou Daren's execution, sister-in-law did not attend. Brother took her instead to a secluded villa by the hot springs beyond the city walls. There were mountains, there was water, the perfect place to ease the weight from one's heart. Perhaps the place truly was blessed, for not long after their return, sister-in-law conceived. Mother was so overjoyed, she burned 10 sticks of incense for father each day, praying that, wherever he was, he would feast well and bless sister-in-law and her child with peace and safety. 14. When sister-in-law's pregnancy reached the 8th month, brother received his military orders. The enemies beyond the border had risen again. He had to go. Mother could not sleep a single night, her tears falling like beads of broken thread. Clutching brother tightly, she cried, "Son, let us leave this official life behind. I care nothing for grand houses, nothing for sleeping atop gold. Come back to the village with me. We can till the land and live a humble, happy life." Brother bowed his head and knelt before her, saying only one sentence, "Mother, in my heart, there is not only family, but country, and the brothers who stand beside me." Such a grand sentiment left mother without reply. Sister-in-law, too, said nothing. She even smiled, smiling as she packed brother's belongings herself, from robes to boots to socks, not allowing Cui Huan to assist even once. She folded every item neatly with her own hands. That smile, so gentle yet so steadfast, struck a deep sorrow into my heart. And my foolish amissings, I thought perhaps the very first civil official who forbade marriage to military men was not fearing imperial wrath, but rather simply a father's love for his daughter. He knew, once a soldier went to war, whether he returned or not depended only on the mercy of heaven. He could not bear to let his daughter live a life of constant fear. Thus, he had crafted such an excuse. I asked sister-in-law if she regretted her choice. She shook her head and said, "Only by following your brother did I come to understand what it means to be a soldier. If I were to regret loving him because he might die, that would be a desecration of everything he stands for. I worry, but I will never hinder him." Brother must have understood her heart too. He said no sorrowful farewells, only seized every moment he could, whittling many little wooden horses and swords. He said that practicing martial arts would benefit boys and girls alike, and these toys would be as if he were staying close by in spirit. He also left sister-in-law a thick, heavy book, filled with clumsy handwriting, yet full of heartfelt meaning. A record of his feelings after every victory won on the battlefield, a comfort for her heart while he was away. 15. 2 months after brother left, sister-in-law gave birth. It was a beautiful little niece. We named her Yuanan, wishing peace for those far away. Sister-in-law remained busy, managing the household, caring for Yuanan, and expanding the family business with relentless energy. She earned vast fortunes, far surpassing even the gold brother had once given mother. Every time the court called for donations to fund the army, our family's name was always at the top of the list. Sister-in-law thought, even if it only meant a thicker suit of armor, a sharper sword, a slightly greater chance for brother to survive, it would be worth every hardship. But the war dragged on, longer and longer. By the time Yuan turned 3, brother had still not returned. I knew the steady stream of letters could no longer soothe sister-in-law's heart. She secretly began practicing horseback riding, gritting her teeth even when her thighs were raw and bleeding. She remained only because of mother and me, believing it her duty to care for us in brother's absence. On Yuan's birthday, I handed sister-in-law the travel pack I had prepared for her, and proudly said, "Sister-in-law, you may go. I am 17 now. Everything you have taught me, I have learned well. You can leave everything here to me, both the household and the business." Sister-in-law hesitated but a moment, kissed her sleeping daughter on the forehead, then mounted her horse and rode away with gallant ease. Poor little me! I had not yet realized that no matter how easy it was to manage business, it was infinitely harder to soothe a child crying for her mother. Still, I was glad I let her go. My marvelous sister-in-law, truly a woman of extraordinary abilities. Originally, she had set out only to open a shop near the frontier, but her skills in painting far surpassed even the portrait artists of the army. Thanks to her, brother managed to capture a most vital enemy figure, and to ransom him back, that enemy nation was forced to sign a treaty of tribute to our empire. The day brother finally returned home, he wore a robe embroidered with dragons. the formal robe of a marquis. My brother, who had married a good wife, had in exchange for his life's blood earned not only rank and glory, but a hereditary title, the Marquis of Ronyang. We cared little for wealth and grandeur. All mother cared for was that with such rank, even if brother must still go to war, he would no longer be thrown recklessly into the vanguard. On that day of joyous reunion, every adult wore a smile bright as the spring sun. Everyone except the tiny figure clinging to my leg, little Yuan N. She was 5 now, but she had never forgotten the night she fell asleep and woke to find her mother gone. Her round, glistening eyes welled up, and she turned her face away with a sharp little humph, refusing to look at her parents. Brother, so proud and unyielding a man, had red rims to his eyes. When he left, his daughter had been no more than a growing swell in sister-in-law's belly. Now, she was a lively little girl, capable of anger, of sulking, of withholding her gaze. When it came to coaxing children, sister-in-law surrendered immediately. Brother doted on Yuan and so fiercely, it was almost laughable. If she wanted to ride a horse, he stooped down without a word and hoisted her onto his shoulders. If she asked for the moon, he clambered onto the rooftop, lifting her high, letting her reach up, laughing toward the silver disk in the sky. Under the gentle glow of moonlight, in the peaceful courtyard of the Song family, I thought we would surely remain, thus happy, thus united, forever. The end.